and welcome to New Filmmakers Los Angeles in partnership with Movie Maker magazine. My name is Danny DeLillo. We're here at the South Park Center. I'm delighted to be joined with Maleah and Colton with their movie, Meltdown, A Nuclear Family's Ascension into Madness. Let's take a look at the clip. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the New Filmmakers LA family. Thank you so much for bringing your film. You scared the hell out of me. But for those that haven't seen it, tell us a brief synopsis.
Yeah, the film centers around a 1950s family who they have a dinner party and someone spikes the drinks with LSD. And one of the families has a secret. Their son's been missing for 2 years, and through everyone's collective acid trips, the truth emerges.
When I saw the film, and especially the time period and the depth of character and everything else, I was like, this person must have made 20 films. I'm like, oh my goodness, you're so young, not long graduated, you've done this incredible film, which is amazing. And I love how you shared last night about the inspiration about behind the story and where it came from. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, my grandma served in the Women's Auxiliary Australian Air Force during World War II, and it was a branch of the Australian military that was ran entirely by women. And then she met my grandpa, who was American, during the war, and they got married. And then as soon as the war ended, they moved to Moraga, California, and she became basically just a housewife. You're just like classic
homemaker.
Yeah, so she met my grandpa, who was American, during the war. They got married, and then they moved to Moraga, California. And I was just fascinated by that kind of change in lifestyle, from going from serving during the war and a very unique experience in a branch of the military that was all women, to being a housewife in the 1950s, which was stereotypically so repressed. And she passed when I was fairly young, so I didn't get to ask her a ton of questions about that. But I've always been fascinated with that dichotomy. And so that was kind of the inspiration for Ruby, and this character who has one foot in kind of both worlds and what comes from that.
Well, they did a really good job. Like, I actually didn't recognize you because your character went through so much, and then when you started smiling, I was like, oh my god, it is you.
Short hair.
Yeah, and short. I know exactly a while ago, right? But no, you did a fantastic job. How did you get involved with the project? And tell us a little about the character of the film as well.
So me and Colton actually went to film school together. A lot of people who worked on the film all went to film school together. And when we first started working on the film, it was in 2020, middle of lockdown. And Colton brought up this idea of like, I kind of want to make a film. I want it to be 1950s acid horror. He was like, I have all these ideas that I want to combine into one. And he was like, what if we all write it together and you get to like be a part of the writing process for your character? And being someone who's an actor but also went to film school, that was like a very exciting idea for me. So yeah, we all met over Zoom, like for, I don't know how long it was, quite a few months, and did the first initial process of writing, and then he went in and like worked out all the tweaks and everything.
And the character that you played, like, it must be really a unique experience to be able to be part of the writing process and then play that character.
Definitely.
Like, how was that for you?
It's interesting now because now I'm kind of starting, it's become like a common thing in my life to do that.
Great.
So I guess it stuck with me. I did like the experience. But it is interesting because I'm asking like myself questions that I guess I normally would ask as an actor, but I don't get to like go and ask. I do get to go and ask the writer, but I'm also asking myself as the writer, like, what do I think this character is really making that choice for?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it just comes back to me having written like the initial scene of certain of her alone scenes.
And for you, Colton, you know, again, I think it's always, you know, so special when someone close to you, and that was the inspiration behind, you know, your story. And so, you know, thank you for doing that. But, you know, there's not enough light shone on the incredible women that fought during both wars. And just how awful kind of that time was, you know, in society, in certain areas, in certain periods, in certain communities. And you really shone a light on the hard work that many women did across both world wars and today as well. Was that something that you wanted to bring into focus? Because it's such a contrast to see the great work that's being done, and then that 1950s like kind of vibe where it's all very suppressed, you know, particularly for women as well.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by films that center around the housewife in that era, and specifically films by Douglas Sirk and the like classic 1950s melodrama. There's just such a art in depicting that type of character with those genre conventions. Yeah, there's so much in those films that are lurking just under the surface. And a more contemporary director that I really gravitate towards is Todd Haynes' work, and how he approaches his female characters. And both of those directors are huge inspirations for this film. The 1950s melodrama, so much is hidden just underneath the surface, but LSD is typically used in film to explode all of those repressions onto the surface. And so part of why I wanted to use that as a narrative tool was to just take a time period that's known for people repressing everything, and then put LSD into that time period and those characters, and just explode all of those emotions across the screen.
And that you did. And what was it like playing like a role like that? What was that experience? Because you and the rest of your cast did such an amazing job. Like there was moments in there where you couldn't breathe because you didn't know what was going to happen next, and you left us in some crazy moments. How was this kind of experience? And then bring the element of LSD and acid horror and all of that stuff. How was that?
Yeah, I mean, it almost felt like doing a theater performance, which I think is what every film actor kind of wants working on a set to feel like. We were like living in the home. It was, very invasive, and you actually felt like you could like become this character and really explore it, which was crazy and fun and interesting. And
yeah, and you actually filmed it in your producer Sophia's grandparents' home, right?
Yeah. Yes.
How was that with all that cast being in like, you know, the grandparents' home? What was that experience like?
I loved it personally, because if an actor had a question, they could just come by and ask it after we wrapped. I think it builds a really close-knit kind of family. Not everyone stayed at the main house. We had 2 houses, and some actors got hotels around, but it just, like, the whole atmosphere it created was great. And the crew would go out. There's a local bar they'd go to, and so they got to bond and hang out. Meanwhile, all the producers were working late every night, scheduling everything, but I loved it.
It was awesome because I was in a room that was right next to you and Sophie's room, and so I could like knock on your door and be like, wait, I don't understand, what are we doing with this part of the script? And then one of the producers, who was also our sound person on set, would be like, well, what about this? And we'd all like huddle together and be like, yeah, we need to figure that out. And we'd break it down like in our bedrooms at night.
Oh, that's good.
Nice.
Yeah, because there's a lot of work and play. And that's going to bring me to ask you, like, as a director, how you directed and how you worked with your actors. You know, there's quite a big cast, and you know, I'm sure you didn't. Surprisingly enough, though, you didn't have a lot of time, like even rehearsal, like for this film, did you? It was like a couple of Zooms.
Yeah, we had a couple of Zoom rehearsals, and then once we got on set, we just kind of had to jump into it. That's you know, low budget indie filmmaking.
Yeah.
I had as many meetings as I could with each actor ahead of time to talk to them about their character and answer every question I could. And so I knew we were going to be rushed on set, so I took as much time as we could in pre-production to try and iron out every beat. I think the hardest part about that and working with the actors was we didn't film in order. And so sometimes the actors would go from having to act completely sober to then being at like the peak of the acid trip. And then the next scene would be back down here.
Yeah.
And each actor kind of needed a different system for how to place themselves within that trip. So some people just wanted a number. They just wanted like 1 to 10, like where are we at in the trip. Other people wanted like flavors or more intense of a backstory about what they're experiencing. But that was something that was really important to me, was trying to make their performances of the trip feel as authentic as possible. And bouncing around between scenes can make that very challenging.
Well, I've obviously met some of your team yesterday as well, and like, you all went to like film school together. Was it nice to like go on that journey together when you've kind of grown through all the ups, the downs, the highs, the lows of being in like film school, and then like make this feature together? How was that for you, Maleah?
I mean, it's amazing. Like, we're all so young, and to be able to, just make a movie on its own is such a hard thing to do, and be able to do it at the age that we did is pretty impressive. And also do it with all your best friends who you're close with and you've worked with. Like, I was Colton's production designer on his senior thesis. He was my producer on my senior thesis. And then to go in and be like, okay, now let's make a feature. Like, we've just graduated. That's really amazing.
Yeah, it's not just fun, but it's also, I think, the reason why this was able to actually happen was the fact that we all knew each other. We all enjoyed working together. I think that indie feature filmmaking on this level is so challenging to get to the finish line. And it was really just the fact that we had such a good, close-knit team. Everyone enjoyed working together.
Speaking of which, what, as a filmmaker, you've made obviously early in your career, but you've made a few films already, which is great. What advice would you give to anyone out there that wants to follow as a filmmaker, but for both your perspectives?
I always feel so weird giving advice because I feel so young and so early in my work. I guess there's some sort of middle ground. Like, I feel like at these festivals, I hear the directors say, usually older directors saying, oh, it's so easy, you can just like grab a camera, go out and start shooting. Back in my day, you had to buy film, you had to pay for all of that. And I feel like that's the wrong approach a little bit, because I think you have to like start writing, first of all. I think you have to like really refine what the idea is and work and find a good cast and like then go start shooting. So that would be my advice, is like write as much as you can. Every idea you have, even if it's a bad idea, write it down, because you never know which one of those ideas will lead to something else.
Yeah, we don't hear that very often. That's really cool. How about for you, Maleah?
I mean, I would say just start shooting.
Yeah, that's okay. This is why I love filmmaking. That's great.
I mean, there's a lot of like, we raised money for this, so it's like, we didn't just go out with an iPhone and shoot this movie, but you can do that, and you can get there's many mini DV features that are great and amazing. I think. And I love those movies. So I think if that's your path, like, that's awesome, and you're gonna make a good film because that's what you're feeling called to. And just go out and make things and try without money, and then try and gain money the way that we did, and then try and put together a crew. And we were just lucky and fortunate to have known crew members and had that film school background.
Well, the more you write and the more you shoot, the more experience and practice and things you get, and the better you get at it as well. And finally, what is next for you both?
What's next for you?
What's next for you?
Sophie and I we co-wrote an adaptation of a 19th century Danish novel that we're developing right now and trying to shoot in Denmark in the next couple years.
Nice. Fantastic.
I also co-wrote a feature with my friend Dustin and Ian, and so we're pitching that around right now.
Nice.
Trying to get a little more funding just to see, what that would be like. So we'll see.
Fantastic. Well, listen, thank you both so much for being here. Thank you for bringing us such a meltdown to our lives. Welcome to New Filmmakers, and congratulations on your film. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maleah and Colton, everybody.